This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by Paulie Malignaggi here in Manchester. Paulie, always a pleasure to see you. Big fight week, Smith-Eubank Jr. too. What did you take away from the press conference there?
I tell you, that was a good press conference, some good trash talking. Liam Smith is a good trash talker. That's what I got out of it. Liam Smith knows how to play really good mind games. I tell you, he had an answer for everything, and it was really quizzical, if that's a word. You know, like he was really inquisitive of Eubank, and I thought he did a good job. Listen, I'm still very curious about what the result of this fight will be, but I think Liam Smith said all the right things in that press conference.
A month out from the fight, Junior announced his new trainer, Bomac. Is that too late and too close to such a big fight in Junior's career to make such a change?
I mean, it's all into what psychologically makes him feel better, I guess. You know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know from a technical standpoint what you're going to be able to do, but I think also Bomac knows from a technical standpoint what are you really going to be able to do. It's more so, you know, from a psychological perspective, you've got the trainer who's training the best pound for pound fighter in the world. You're going to do some work with him. You're probably going to work on key game planning elements, if anything, but it's not a lot of technical stuff. But then again, Eubank was winning the first fight until he got caught. Does Eubank have to make the adjustments, or does Smith have to make the adjustments? That's the question.
Well, that's the question I was going to ask you. What do you expect to see from either man which will be different in this fight as opposed to the first one?
Well, Smith was losing until he caught him, right? So does that mean Smith can just depend on losing the fight until you catch somebody? Or does Smith have to actually make the adjustments to make sure he's not losing the fight just in case he doesn't catch Eubank this time? Because let's face it, Eubank before the last fight was known to have a very good chin. As for Eubank, it's more about consistency, really. He was doing a good job, and then all of a sudden, his inconsistency, he got distracted, and Smith winds up hurting him. So he actually, I think, has to make less adjustments, and his adjustment physically, but his adjustment has to be more mental, you know, and it has to come into the point where he's got to make sure he keeps everything disciplined and he keeps his eyes dotted and his T's crossed, so to speak, and keep everything on the straight and narrow, because he's got the physical gifts to be ahead in a fight against Smith as long as he doesn't get undisciplined. I think for me, the physical adjustments are on Smith, but of course you never know what psychology plays in when you've knocked somebody out, and with how they come into the fight, meaning that they've been knocked out. So all these intangibles, we don't have a lot of answers to. We consider them, we bring them up, but this is why you watch the fight, and that's why this rematch got made.
Do you have a prediction?
I really would just be, you know, flipping a coin if I gave you a prediction, you know. Also, I probably have to call the fight, so if I give you a prediction, people will think like one way or the other I'm favoring somebody. But I don't really, you know. It's not an easy one to pick, because you can talk about some intangibles, and then you know, you can go with one guy, and then you talk about some other intangibles and you go with the other guy. You know, you'd also have to be a psychiatrist, because you'd have to really know what would be in Eubank's mind after being knocked out, and none of us can know that unless we're not in Eubank's mind. So there's a lot of things that are up in the air. They're intangibles, and that's why you just got to watch the fight and call it. Though I'm going to look forward to calling it.
People are mentioning that if Junior was to lose, it may be the end of the road, but we know that he'll always have, say, a Conor Benn fight there in front of him, regardless of Saturday night. If he was to lose, and if it was to be in a similar fashion to the first fight, do you think that Junior would have to seriously consider whether he should continue in the sport?
I mean, I don't know. I think anytime you lose, you're always at a high level, and you're coming down to a certain age. You know, sometimes you think to yourself, okay, how much more do I want to do this? How much more do I want to keep putting myself through this? Do I want to rebuild back? Is the road to rebuilding worth it? And that's sort of the questions you start to ask yourself. I think both of these guys have that question if they lose, you know. But one thing's for sure, though. I think in the very least, if Eubank wins, you can maybe make a third fight here between these two, and you'd have a trilogy. But it's certainly a question I think either guy would be asking himself at this point in their careers if they lost.
Just away from this, I want to get your thoughts on a couple of other topics. There's all the talk of whether Terence Crawford and Crawford-Spence will rematch. Do you think that we will see that rematch?
I hope not. I don't want to see it. I think it's a waste of time.
Terence Crawford saying that he'd be happy to jump up to 168 to face Canelo. We know how talented he is. What would be your thoughts if he was to do something such as that?
I don't know, man. I think it's, you know what, the things you see in boxing today, nothing would surprise or shock me. So, I mean, if he's able to do that, more power to him. But, you know, I'm not sure how seriously Canelo is taking that right now, but we'll see. Anything's possible. We've seen some weird things in boxing in the latest years.
How do you rate Canelo-Charlo's chances against Canelo?
think Jamel's a very talented fighter, but he comes undone a little bit. He opens up himself up and he gets a little bit crazy in the exchanges. We noticed that with the Brian Castano fight and all that stuff. And honestly, with a guy 2 weight classes bigger and that strong, I don't know if you can afford to do that. I think if Jamel is mentally focused and disciplined, he can make a good fight out of this. Because I think he's more gifted as an athlete, but I just don't know if mentally he has the self-control to keep a disciplined game plan throughout the whole fight. I haven't noticed that from him yet.
This past weekend we saw Alexander Usyk retain his heavyweight crown with victory against Daniel Dubois. What did you make of his fight, and did you think it was a low blow?
I didn't think it was a low blow. I thought it was a good body shot. But what did I make of the fight? I thought that the rain was the biggest issue. A wet ring is a big problem for any boxer. Most people that are listening to this are going to have a clue, not have a clue what I'm talking about. Some of them will probably say that I'm making excuses or bringing up the wrong subject. I think that is the only subject that should be talked about is the wet ring, because the wet ring probably also has to do with the fact that Usyk is in position to get hit with that body shot. You're not able to shift your weight accordingly. To understand what I'm saying, there are some things that where you say, oh, you have to have done it to understand, and then people get mad when they haven't done it. Understanding boxing is one of those things where you may want to have done it at least to a degree, but understanding boxing in a wet ring, you have to definitely have done it, because you have no idea what I'm talking about when I try to describe the things I'm talking about. But your planted foot, your lead foot, your leveraged foot that you're pushing off of always will slide out when the ring is wet. So whatever you're sliding out or you're sliding in, you're trying to push off in or pushing off out, you're always going to have a problem. So, I think Usyk trying to move over to his right with the moment he got hit with the body shot, it probably would have been a better shift over to the right if he probably wasn't sliding with his left foot as he was trying to push off. You noticed it in the Dubois knockdown too. When Dubois got knocked down the first time, his back foot just went out from under him. I think that was absolutely so much unprofessionalism to not have had that taken care of in such a big fight. I mean, that was actually pretty disgraceful. That's the disgrace of the fight, is the wet ring.
And final one from me, Paul. There's a lot of talk of Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder facing each other early next year. If that one gets over the line, how do you see it playing out?
Wilder Joshua, another fight I really don't have any interest in. It was just like Spence and Crawford. It probably should have happened a few years ago, where I did have interest in it. I think Joshua was a very fun fighter and a very adept fighter a few years ago. And I think he would have, it would have been a good fight a few years ago. I don't think it's a good fight now.
Paulie, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
You got it.